Good morning. It's good to see you again today. I'm continuing on from where I left off yesterday. There's too much in the first couple of verses of Romans 12 to put into one thought for the day. And I know some of you, your thoughts naturally went on to the next verse, verse 2, having thought of ourselves as being a living sacrifice, a sacrifice that we make every day. We commit ourselves every day. We place ourselves on the altar. We give up for God our own desires, our own wishes, our own wants, and we become a spiritual living sacrifice. It's our spiritual worship. And then he goes on in verse 2 to say, "Do not be conformed to this world, but be transformed by the renewal of your mind, that you may prove what is the will of God, what is good and acceptable and perfect." The word in Greek translated acceptable there means well-pleasing, good, well-pleasing and perfect. I'm going to read it in the Amplified, that verse 2 of Romans chapter 12. "Do not be conformed to this world, this age." That's the word used there, not cosmos, not the world, but this age. That is this culture rather than this world, fashioned after and adapted to its external and superficial customs, but be transformed, changed by the entire renewal of your mind, by its new ideals and its new attitude, so that you may prove for yourselves what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God in his sight for you. So it's about we've had it described, conforming something is shaping it, fashioning it, making it into the same shape as that which you're copying. Or some people have said, squeeze you into its mold. And culture changes. The world in which we live has changed many times during my lifetime. And every time it changes, we have to resist the conforming of us to its ways. And then it's interesting that Paul uses the same word, conform, when he says here, do not be conformed or do not be shaped by this age, by its customs and its ways. And yet in Romans 8, verse 29, he says, "For those whom he foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son." So God is wanting to conform us, to make us into the image of his Son. He wants to make us like Jesus. And it's the same word. Do not be conformed to this age. Be conformed. God is conforming you and me into the image of his Son. The image of his Son. In the beginning, man and woman were created in the image of God, shaped like God. Maybe not physically shaped like God, but inside, with a likeness to God that is enhanced and emphasized when the Holy Spirit comes within us. All those qualities that are in Jesus, all those qualities we see in Jesus are recreated in us by the Holy Spirit as he conforms us to the image of Jesus. But we have to do our bit by not being conformed to this world, not allowing the world's thinking to change our understanding of what's right and wrong, to change our understanding of what we should and should not be doing, and how we should or should not behave. This is why we belong to a different kingdom with different rules and different ideas and different standards and different priorities. We belong to a different kingdom. So our bit is, as we present ourselves to God as a living sacrifice, as we meditate and dwell on his word, and we think about what he has to say to us, we allow our thinking to be changed, to be metamorphosized, if that's such a word, to be changed. So that, and what is the reason for that change? So that you may prove for yourselves what is the good and acceptable and perfect will of God. What is right in his eyes for you and for me. Because what he might lead you to do may be completely different to what he's led me to do. I mean, his call on your life is going to be different to his call on my life. And you have seen, I mean, these daily thoughts for the day are miraculous. I'm an ordinary, retired lady who's loved the Lord since she was 14 and a half and served him and read his word repeatedly. And here I am, in a couple of weeks' time, I will celebrate 5 whole years of every day having something given to me by God to share with the people who listen. That is miraculous. Someone said to me the other day, well, a few weeks ago, someone who came to the church and when I was talking to her about the thought for the day, she said, what do you do on those mornings when you get up and you don't want to do the thought for the day? You can't be bothered, or you haven't got any ideas, or you just don't feel like it. And I looked at her with a very puzzled expression on my face, and I said, it's never happened. I wake up every morning, and God gives me a thought, gives me a verse, gives me an idea, gives me something to talk about, and I share it with you. And you come back with, this is exactly what I needed to hear today. This is what I needed God to tell me today. Or I was looking at that very verse yesterday and thinking, what did that mean? And you talk about it. That's God. This is God. And when he gives you something that you have to do, we have to, as we listen to him, and we don't conform to the world in which we live, but we conform to his thinking, and we let him guide our minds, we find, we prove, we discover for ourselves the good, acceptable, and perfect will of God in his sight for you and for me. And I think it's quite deliberate here that it says the good, well-pleasing, and perfect will of God. And to me, that picks up on a thought that is at the end of the greatest parable God ever spoke, I think, which is the parable of the sower. Jesus himself said, this is the most important parable. If you understand this, you will understand all the parables. The parable of the sower, when the seed is sown on the good ground, it comes up. It says it in verse 8 of Matthew 13. Other seeds fell on good soil and brought forth grain, some 100-fold, some 60, some 30. And when Jesus interpreted it, he said, as for what was sown on good soil, this is he or she who hears the word and understands it. He or she bears fruit and yields, in one case 100-fold, in another 60, in another 30. I think that's the 3 in the reverse order. The good, acceptable, and perfect. The 30, the 60, the 100-fold. In other words, there is a variety of fruitage in those who follow Jesus. Some people bear 30-fold. Some people bear 60-fold. Some people bear 100-fold in the fruit they bring into the kingdom. Some find the good will of God. Some find the well-pleasing will of God. And some find the perfect will of God for them. And it's a progression. I think it's a progression as we grow in faith. When we first come to faith, we may only produce good fruit, 30-fold. And then as we grow in the faith, we produce more, 60-fold, the well-pleasing will of God. And some, as we serve the Lord longer and we yield more to him, the fruiting is bigger at 100-fold, the perfect will of God. It may be that I'm pushing the analogy too far, but I can't see really why Jesus would say that, because when you live in a rural area, which I do now, I haven't always lived, but you go past a field of corn or maize, you go past the field and every plant is the same height. And every ear of corn has the same number of kernels on it. You don't see one that is a third of the size of another, and one that is 3/4 the size, and one that is the full size. It doesn't vary. Maybe it did in the plants that Jesus saw planted. I don't know. But he quite deliberately says that. And I don't know about you, but I want to produce 100-fold. I want to be doing the perfect will of God with my life. See you tomorrow. Bye-bye.